Welcome to the Lovely Podcast. We're your hosts, Adam
and Anisha Leeper, just a couple of young millennials who took the leap from dating to married life. We're here to share the journey with you.
Expect candid conversations with us and our guests, covering everything from the first dates to the early years of marriage.
So take the leap with us on the Lovely Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of the Lovely Podcast. We're joined here by a very special guest, and I will just go right into her bio, Mrs. Jennifer Williams. She's a licensed psychotherapist, certified perinatal mental health specialist, a trauma treatment specialist, a writer, a relationship coach, and a parenting coach. She's a seasoned therapist with over 2 decades of experience in the mental health field. Her professional journey has given her the opportunity to work with a diverse population that includes children, adolescents, adults, couples, and families. Jennifer is a well-rounded expert in the mental health field. She's passionate about helping her clients reach an optimal level of wellness and happiness in their own lives, while also having healthy relationships with the people around them. Beyond her professional roles, she's a devoted wife and mother of 2 vibrant young boys. She's an avid enthusiast of CrossFit, hot yoga, and prioritizes self-care, embodying the balance she advocates for in her practice. Jennifer's integrative approach to mental health and her personal commitment to wellness make her an invaluable resource for anyone looking to enrich their relationships and overall well-being. Jennifer, welcome to the Lovely Podcast.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
No problem.
Absolutely. This is a treat for both of us. But out of that, pretty extensive resume, what would you like to say to the audience out of your bio there?
Just definitely, just the experience working with a wide variety of clients has been very enriching for me, and it definitely helps when working with couples and families and just seeing all sorts of issues that might come up. So a lot of times in my own work, nothing surprises me. So nothing is surprising. It's like I feel like I've seen it, I've heard it. There's very little things that are shocking. So I always make my clients feel really comfortable because they understand that it's non-judgmental. They really feel my approach is warm. And so it's a great fit for me personally. And I just really like what I do. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So part of our podcast for our viewers and listeners is we want to give a professional expertise approach to relationships and bring on experts. So we're going to start off season 2 with hitting you all with expert interviews, just so you get a different perspective, not just of our perspective on what we've been able to do, and how we've been able to grow in our relationship with expert help, but hearing it from, quote unquote, the horse's mouth themselves and what they see out there and tips and tricks that can help along the way. It was extremely valuable to us to get premarital counseling when we got it before we even got
engaged.
Yeah, before we got engaged, we were in premarital counseling because we felt it was such a necessity. So you guys are all in for a treat.
Yeah.
With the topics and the questions that we had today.
And we also I think we've said it before. It doesn't mean that you're at the brink of a breakup. You're at the brink of a divorce. Nothing. You can go just because you want to learn better communication styles with your significant other. And that's the exact reason why we went.
Yep.
And we'll have our therapist on later. But she just thought, she was shocked to know that we were coming and we weren't at the end of a breakup. We were trying to fight for a breakup or whatever. And we were just arguing about why was the dishes in there the wrong way.
She used to laugh at
She used to
us,
laugh at
Jennifer.
us. She'd be like, "Is this what you guys are? This is what you're arguing about?" Yes. Okay. Well, put it in the jar. You can't talk about it anymore. Okay. So just so you guys know, and don't be scared of therapy. We are very big advocates of therapy. We've both done it together and separate, and we think that it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing for growth for yourself, to later on see yourself and then look back and you see where you started from and where you're at now.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. So you want to jump
Yeah,
into?
yeah.
I just wanted to add to that. That's the perfect time to go to counseling. You
Mhm.
don't need to be knocked down, dragged down, get out of my house. This
Mhm.
isn't working. Like you
Yeah.
go, it's kind of that internal check-in, So it's
Yeah.
really good that you guys, okay, let's go to premarital counseling. Even married couples, you don't have to be on the brink of divorce. Like,
Mhm.
let's come in, let's talk about things that are going on.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and talk about premarital counseling in general. So can you explain what premarital counseling typically involves and why you believe it's crucial for couples considering marriage?
Okay. Yeah. So there's such a variety of premarital counseling. So one person's experience may not be identical to other couples because it's really based on kind of what the two of you individually want to work on.
Mm.
So I know when I do premarital counseling, we always address communication. It addresses those things that we may not talk about, beforehand. So we talk about how we communicate, our love languages. We'll talk about finances, parenting styles, like family relationships. So it's all those things that prepare you to kind of to really combine your life with somebody else.
Mhm.
Marriage, you don't do marriage until you're in it. So let's say, okay, those things that we may not have thought about talking about, we'll go to premarital counseling and they'll probably, most likely, will come up and then we can talk about it in that environment.
Yeah. What are the you were talking about some topics or areas that you touch on, but what are some of the common issues that you see addressed or that come up in sessions that you've been doing for the past 2 decades?
Mainly first communication styles,
Mhm.
just how do we talk to each other and how does my
Yeah.
partner receive what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. So just that will always come up. Like, do they understand? Are they listening? Are they listening to respond? Are they listening to understand what I'm saying? So that across the board, just all couples, we always talk about communication. And then the second thing we'll talk about is finances, like
Yeah.
financial management and kind of how are we what's our spending styles and how they impact the relationship. So
Mhm.
really just having an open, trustful, honest conversation about that. And then we'll talk about just marriage. What does that mean? So definitely, what does it mean to be a husband? What does it mean to be a wife? What are my expectations and goals? We want to make sure we really address that to make sure both of you are aligned and your values are aligned in counseling. So when we say, okay, we go through premarital counseling, why is it recommended? To
Mhm.
make sure that your values are aligned, to make sure, do I know this person I'm marrying? This is the person you're sleeping with every night. Do you have
Mhm.
trust in them? And then what are your triggers? Because we all have a history. It's not like, hey, I just met you, now we're married. We have a history of things that trigger us. So, really being internally aware of those things and how they might come up in the counseling session. And then is that a cue for you individually to say, oh, wait, maybe I need individual counseling now because this triggered me?
That's real.
Very real.
That's a real thing. So how does premarital counseling prepare couples for, challenges when it comes to being married?
It really prepares you for knowing what to expect. So when we talk about premarital counseling, when we talk about goals, I like to talk with my couples about what are your goals for the first year of marriage? What are you expecting
Mhm.
this is going to be like? Because many of us, we have the wedding and then what comes next. So
Right.
it's the wedding. Great. We spent all this time planning. So a lot of couples will spend that premarital time planning for the wedding, but not planning for after the wedding. So it gives you that foundation of what I'm going to expect when the party's done, when the guests leave, when we open all the gifts. Now is when we're married. And
Mhm.
what is this like for us? Right. So did I know these bad habits? Whether you live with the person or not, it's like, did I know his family history? Did I know that she had this sort of trauma growing up as a child? Do I feel safe with my partner that I'm talking with? Because a lot of times in communication, what we don't say is because we don't feel safe saying it.
Yeah.
Do are we able to really express that to each other? So that's the foundation. That's the foundation that I like to make sure my clients are getting when they come to premarital counseling. That foundation to be able to communicate, to be able to express your levels of safety, and to be able to work on, okay, I'm going to trust myself and I'm trusting my partner that we're both in this together for the reasons I'm expecting them to be.
Yeah, that's so good. Because just the part that you were saying about people just plan up to the wedding day, and it's like that's marriage to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were, and this is, I'm gonna go out of the questions because this like came to my head, but we were been living together for 7 years, only married for what, 7 years, going on 3 years of marriage.
Years, yeah.
Yeah, 6-ish years. So like all that stuff of that you're seeing, like about the families and the different patterns and the triggers, like all that just boils up, and we saw that firsthand.
Yeah.
Beforehand, and we didn't ever really think that, oh, the wedding day is it, like, because we were really like our arms were a little twisted to go into the wedding day. I'm throwing shots at my mother-in-law. I love her though, because we were gonna just go to the courthouse
And just
and just,
elope and call it a day.
because that's it. The day itself wasn't that important as what we were
building for after.
Right.
and what we were building in between that, like even
Yeah.
before that to after that. Like we were looking farsighted on like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, like is our relationship gonna look, versus, oh, we're planning the wedding out and the day is a year and a half away. Like that's the only goal that we have.
Well, see, and something else that you said that was very interesting to me is you can be with somebody for however many years and not know them. And, you know, there's like that missing piece of communication. And that kind of tailors back, and we've had this conversation before, that, you know, you see what you kind of like want to be growing up from just parents. You see it from just the village that you have. And if you don't see like your parents kind of communicating and things like that, you don't have those, you're not growing up knowing those things. And so then when you get into relationships and stuff, then the person that you're with is probably has it, and then you're lacking it, but then you find out later on and it's like, wait a minute, I thought I was communicating correctly this whole time. It's so crazy to me how just like in general, your upbringing really does hinder a lot of the things that you're finding out later on in your adult years.
And I'm curious, or sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say to that, Anisha, it's modeling. It's modeling. We only know what we know, right? So if we saw our parents interact like this, or we saw certain things, you think it's normal because it's what you know. Well, what if your partner didn't grow up like that? So to them, that's not normal. So then how do we communicate that to each other?
Right.
Yeah, we've definitely had those situations, but I'm curious to know from your perspective, because our parents are the baby boomer generation, and it's one of those things of, oh, you don't need to be shacking up, don't shack up.
Gosh.
But we had a different, well, of course we had a different opinion on that. But
we had a different opinion on like my parents, in which I didn't think that was going to happen.
Your parents had the same opinion that we did. So I'll break it down to you, so you're like with us in this conversation. So our opinion on it was, well, the main question is like, how do you get to understand a person if you don't live with them? We felt like a lot of issues start to arise when you say like, hey, we've been living in separate homes. Now let's put everything together and make it fit like a puzzle piece. And I really don't know a lot about you, because you've been putting on mostly a professional or like a better front of yourself when we're on dates or anything like that, versus when I'm living with you 24/7, you're not going to be on like that all the time. There's going to be an off switch. So what do you look like in that off switch? And then there was other things about like,
but also
monetarily.
like, and you would know this, but like, how common is that now anymore? Like, I know growing up in movies, you know, like that was like the cute thing. Oh, you're engaged, you're gonna get married. Are you gonna move into his house or is he moving into yours?
Yeah.
And that was like the thing. But like now we're like in a whole different generation and decade where I want to know like, how common is that anymore, where it's like they have to find which house they're moving into and then move into that house versus, you know, they're dating and they're in separate houses versus them just like shacking up.
Yeah. What are you seeing in your practice when it comes to the quote unquote shacking up, and with the couples that have come through your practice? What's that dynamic been, and like where's that trend at now?
That word is
what
so outdated.
What?
Shacking up.
It is, but you know, that's the only thing we have so far right now. Cohabitating.
I
What is
will
that?
say, I will say that I see both. You know, I see couples that don't live together until after the wedding, and then I would say I see more couples that do live together. Why? Because it's cheaper to both live in the same space. So we have to be real. It's like economical. If I'm dating you, we're serious. Let's just move in and combine incomes. So, you know, so more couples actually live together, but I do see couples that don't live together. And I think each dynamic has its own individual challenge there.
Yeah.
You know, because even though I might live with you for 5 years, it's still like, okay, we're getting married. I'm still learning things about you every day. We're still growing together every day. There's still things that's going on. And if we don't live together, it could be like maybe he leaves his socks all over the place and I don't like socks in the living room. So now we're fighting about these socks. So it's just a separate set of challenges, but for each couple, you know, just finding their way. So, you know, I wouldn't say, oh, this is better or worse, but, you know, just find what works for you.
Yeah. I noticed that there's been like an influx, and I don't know if you've ever noticed. I think we've had a conversation before. There's an influx in like now where people are now getting homes and they have separate bedrooms, like separate spaces.
I guess going back to old school.
Yeah, like it's, you know, when grandparents slept in separate rooms type of thing.
Right. Jewish community, it's still
yeah,
big
that's a thing that they do. They sleep in separate beds. I think it's just only during a specific time of the month. But is that like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like exactly what I'm gonna ask, but I've noticed it, and I guess, would you say that it works a lot better for a lot more couples than it doesn't? Or
what's your opinion on that? Like, from your experience? You know, how would you weigh in on that trend? Or
I'll give you my opinion. If you have the space, it's not bad to have your own space. You know, so it's okay to say, okay, this is my space. This is where I go to recharge. This is what I need. Like if we're having a heated argument and we need to cool down, this is the space that I go to. So it's okay. Like you know, some homes have man caves, or women have their own room that they use. That's okay. And you know, if you have the space that's big enough, I recommend having that so you could have your own stuff. So you don't feel like, oh, like everything is all with this person all the time. Some couples do choose to sleep in separate bedrooms. And, you know, again, it works for them. You know, that works for them. You know, it's like, hey, I'll sleep here, but I really like this bed, or you snore too much. Or there's a reason, you know, why I just don't want to sleep with somebody. They get really hot at night, and that's okay. That works for them. I do say, you know, it's also important that you do want to have intimacy, connection. Sexual connection is really important for marriages. So you do want to always feel like, okay, are we making that time for intimacy? Are both of our intimate needs being met, even if we do have separate spaces?
That makes sense. That's what I was wondering, how you were gonna put in the intimacy part back into it. Of like, if we have separate spaces and we're sleeping in like separate rooms, how do we do that? Because for us, we've talked about at least having separate hobbies and going to do
having your own separate things that you do without your significant other that makes you happy. But I just noticed that that was like a big thing now. Oh, I have my separate bedroom from my spouse. Like I have everything in there. But it makes sense when you say it like that because they do. They have man caves, they have she sheds, they have their own beauty rooms, they have their own closets. And some of these people deck out their closets and have like a sitting room in it. So you have to have sometimes your own space because I mean, if you think about it, if you're upset, every single space is conjoined. You go into that space and then your partner's following you like, oh, I was just coming in here to change. You're like, I needed some time. Like,
I need
what's
some time.
happening?
Right. I need some time. I need that
Yeah.
space. And when we're talking about intimacy, I want to say, look, you don't just have to have sex at night when we're sleeping in the same bed. You have sex whenever. So
Yeah.
it could happen like in the living room, in the kitchen, whatever. So wherever that space is, that time, that works. And that works for people.
That's yeah, I love that. So what are the as far as misconceptions when it comes to uh, like premarital counseling or relationship counseling? What are some of the biggest misconceptions that come up in your practice that you end up like breaking or getting breakthroughs uh,
Mhm.
with clients on?
Well, one is that where people have to feel like there's an issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they have to feel like, oh, this is wrong or I'm doing something wrong. So even with therapy, people feel like, oh, if I go to therapy, there's something wrong with me. And so, just normalizing the process, there's nothing wrong. We're enhancing things. So what are we enhancing? What are we working on? What are we growing on and really building on? Or just also seeing again with like communication where one person doesn't see a problem with something that their partner sees a problem with. So when we have those breakthroughs and trying to say, okay, let's see why this might be a problem, how do we understand our partner's perspective and really take time to listen and to listen to their needs in the moment, then we're able to kind of make those breakthroughs.
Here for that. Yeah. So, what role does individual therapy play in enhancing the relationship health of like a couple?
That's a good question. I always think, people should. Now, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion. I will not say that everybody should go to therapy. I don't
Mm-hmm.
say everybody needs therapy because people have their own coping skills. And if you're able to manage in life, you don't need therapy. You can figure
Yeah.
out how to cope. You're able to make it. But remember, when you're getting married, it's like, okay, maybe you should go to individual therapy because what comes up, those triggers that you don't think about, those things where it's like, oh, I wrapped this away in a box when it's happened to me. But all of a sudden, your partner starts to trigger that, and that
Yep.
box starts to open. And they have no idea why that's opening because you never found a way to communicate that. And so, individual therapy really just helps you look at your internal self. So as I go into this marriage, what's my own feelings about marriage? How do I feel? How does this affect me? Those parts of me that come up as I think about sharing my life with another person. Is it my whole life? And it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
everything about you. How comfortable do you feel letting that person in?
Yeah, and you started bringing up unpopular opinions. What are some other unpopular opinions? Yeah, let's get to the real meat of it.
So
What are your unpopular opinions when it comes to relationships and marriage?
I would definitely say, and I don't know where it came from, where people say don't go to bed angry. That's always
Ooh.
like when they say don't go to bed angry. I don't know if that's like an old school mentality. I go to bed angry sometimes, but it doesn't mean that
Ooh.
I stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like sometimes we need a break. Like okay, and one of the things you want to do when you find yourself, you don't want to have those heated arguments at night. I'm going to stay up all night and we're going to talk about this. That doesn't
Yeah.
right? Because you're tired, I'm tired, and we might need to like table this until the morning. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. We can table it, we can take our space, we can come back, we can cool down. I could process what I want to say. And that stops us from blaming our partner. That stops us from holding contempt from our partner. So sometimes
Hmm.
you just need to say, you know what, let's go to sleep. And when, we'll bring this back and make sure we bring it back, make sure we're able to talk about it. But right now, we just need to stop and kind of just go
Wow.
to
Remember, we used to say that a lot when we first started dating.
Yeah, we did. Like, oh, don't go to bed angry. And then one of the first assessments we took with our therapist, it revealed that when we both get like our emotions get heightened in an argument or in conflict, it's like just don't expect anything good out of it.
What's gonna happen?
It's like level 10 supernova. Don't expect anything good out of it. You need to just go cool off somewhere and take a break. And that was one of the things I remember. Now that you said that, like that she at least loosely mentioned of like, no, just go take a break.
Yeah, take a break. Just
go chill
chill.
out. Put a pin in it. Just go chill out. Just go chill out. And then, or our jar of
just putting stuff like that you can't talk about in a jar. Like, you can't talk about this anymore. Don't bring it up.
Like, you're never going to see eye to eye on it. At least not now. You both aren't in the mature enough space to communicate this and see. So like
we put politics in a jar.
Put it here. Yeah.
And now we can talk about politics because it's funny.
Because we laugh about it.
But at first, it was really bad. And she's like, you guys got to put that in the jar. You can't talk about it.
Don't talk about it.
Like, all right, okay, cool. But that's very interesting, the don't go to bed angry tip, because we've evolved from don't go to bed angry to don't let me go fly while we're arguing.
Yeah, so my wife's a flight attendant. So sometimes the pattern goes that we'll have an argument and she has to go like maybe within hours or the next day to go on a trip. So that's the thing, is like, don't go to bed. Like, go to bed angry, that's fine. We'll fix it in the morning or the next day. But if she's got to go fly.
I don't like going on a plane knowing that we were arguing. I don't. Because you don't know what can happen. And I've seen it, and we've seen it. We've seen that guy, he was arguing with his wife, you remember, and he was a truck driver and she got into a car accident with the babies in the car. And he was out on the road and they had argued, and that was like the last time that he was able to even talk to her. So that's like my biggest thing, because I'm gone. Like, I'm different cities every couple nights and stuff like that. I don't like that on my conscience. So, but that don't go to bed angry, we stopped that a while ago.
What other unpopular opinions, and then what else you wanted to weigh in on that, do you have?
I don't know. Give me an example of some opinions that people think about.
What are some opinions that we have?
Oh, happy wife, happy life.
Oh yeah, can't
heard
stand
that.
Oh, that's true though.
It's true.
Me personally, can't stand that one.
I think both of you have to be happy. So I think, what people forget is that marriage is a team sport. And so we're in this together. So, I don't want to see my husband unhappy, especially like if we're going to a place and I know he doesn't want to be there. I don't want to be there if he's like not happy. So it might be someplace that I really want to go to. So let's compromise. Let's talk about it, right? It's not all one-sided. What do we need to do? Do we have to set up a time where we can leave, or do something to really make that situation work for both of us? So it's not just like, okay, you have to be happy, you have to do this. It's not one person doing the chores all the time. I will tell you, marriage is not 50-50, where people always feel like, oh, it's 50-50. No. And I was from experiences that I've seen that doesn't work, because it cannot always be 50-50, because some days you may not have anything to give. Like, just say, I have nothing. And the other person being able to say, you know what, that's okay, without resentment, to understand like, okay, I'll take it today, because they know that time will come where they don't have anything. So you trust that your spouse supports you through things. It's not like, oh, we have to be even, or it's your turn. So don't take turns like counting. You did this, I did this.
Yeah.
That's not going to work in the long run. And that's going to build up resentment.
Yeah, I know that's an analogy that I use a lot, and I'll even say it during like when our arguments are kind of winding down and we're coming to the tail end and solving it, is, hey, we're on the same team. And if it's like a basketball game or a basketball team, like maybe I need to take the ball and actually advance it and run the play, and that's what I can do right now is take over the game at this point. But there's still something on your support side that you can do. You can screen, you
Mm-hmm.
can do all this other stuff without having to be the one front and center to score. But when we're both on fire, when we're both doing the like give and go, you're scoring, I'm scoring, like it's good. But especially when issues come, we're like, I tell it all the time, I need my teammate.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
this, it's us versus whatever the issue is out there. I need my teammate to like, let's go to the huddle and figure out this play and let's run it. But we can't sit here and keep yelling at each other. Like you're on
Right.
the wing yelling at me that you see an opening here and I got the ball, I'm getting double teamed or whatever the case is. And I'm like, I need your help. What are you
Yeah.
doing? Like,
Right.
come on.
Right.
Like, versus like us getting in and you're pointing the finger. Like, no, we're not going to win that way.
Right.
Let's get back on one page and communicate and get through this and work as a team because we can't be stopped.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And when one of you wins, you both win. Right. So we
Absolutely.
both win together. So it's not about saying, oh, he got this. And it's like, oh no, oh great. It's like we both got this now,
Really
you
happy
know,
wife,
and when
happy life after that.
Oh my God, no. Happy spouse, happy house. That's the one that I'm putting on a shirt.
You go ahead. That's you. So can early counseling prevent certain types of marital issues from arising later on?
it depends. It depends how early you're talking about. You know, it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I just met you. Next week we're gonna start counseling. Like,
Does that
well, I don't really
happen?
know you. You don't really know. Maybe like a couple months in, but it also depends on the couple, right? So we say, okay, we want to make this work. We're gonna go to counseling. We see, are you able to really identify the issues that you feel
Mm-hmm.
like make a problem? So it's a lot goes back to each person's own individual awareness and being able to be honest with themselves. So when I meet you, it's like I need to know the whole you. Like who are
Yeah.
you? Right?
Mm.
So if you can be honest with yourself and say, okay, this is what I'm bringing to this relationship, and this is how I am, and this might be my triggers and kind of my trauma responses to things.
Right.
And then if you can bring that to counseling, then you have something to work with there. And then that could really, set the foundation for what happens later on. But you also have to remember the more you're married, the more each of you are growing. So it could
Yes.
be the I'm married 5 years from now. Oh wait, we're on a different page. Did we grow together? And
We
you
just had
always
that
want to make sure
conversation.
you're growing together.
Yeah, that's a conversation we've talked about it. Um, we've talked about it a few times, but we recently just had that last week or so
Mm-hmm.
of individually we're gonna keep growing, but
Hmm.
what's the goal of us individually growing? Is it to grow apart or is it to like bring all this stuff back to the relationship where we're stronger? And again, I went
Hmm.
back to that analogy of it's like an off season on a sports team, or she danced for a while when she was a kid. So, but you have off seasons. People go to do their own individual work to get better at whatever it is in practice, and then
Hmm.
they come back and their whole goal is to make sure the team gets farther than where they got the last season.
Mm-hmm.
So seasons of your life you're going to go through, there's going to be times where you have a little bit of pause in between. What are you doing to continue to work on yourself? And then
Yeah.
even in season, what are you doing to work on yourself to make sure the team stays winning and stays moving forward? What was it? Oh, I just had a question and it just left my head.
I wish I could pick it up for you.
It was something that oh, that's what it was. So you were saying like premarital counseling starting it early. How early do you?
I was thinking
I know
that.
because we think alike. We communicate. We run the same plays. How early do you think? Like, would you advocate for couples to start that premarital
Oh, mine
counseling
was a little bit
journey
different, but we're
or
close.
relationship counseling if you want to go even more broad? How early would you advocate for that to happen? Maybe more generally.
Yeah, like you guys started going before you were engaged, right? Right.
We got engaged a month into it, but we had talked about doing it. We just weren't financially in the spot to to afford it.
Yeah.
We talked about that maybe the first year or year and a half we were together.
Yeah,
We
we
were
said
in
that was something
Richmond.
that we wanted to do. And
Yeah.
then we just waited until we were in a financial, like a good financial standing when we moved to Baltimore to then do it.
So that was probably maybe 2.5-ish years in at that point then maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we actually did it. But from when we started talking about it,
It was early.
very early. First few conversations we've actually brought it up and talked about it. But then, yeah. So it was something we always wanted to do. We just, once we were in the spot to be able to afford it, we went ahead and did it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you knew, Adam, you knew, hey, I want Anisha to be my wife, right? And you both were at a point where you're like, okay, we're going to spend our lives together.
Yes.
I knew early.
He did.
You knew early.
I knew
Yeah,
early.
you knew
You
early.
listen.
Like,
You listened to the
I told
podcast. I
you.
knew.
He knew. He did.
Yes, I told you I listened to it. Yes. And so you knew. And so that's, you want to get to that point when you have that conversation and both of you are like, okay, we know we want this. So we may not have a ring yet, but we know, okay, marriage is there. This is my person. And if you both are on that same page, then you could say, hey, let's go to premarital counseling. But you want to make sure that you're both having the same conversation. So it's not Adam having this conversation about marriage and Anisha is like, oh, wait, how soon are we doing this? Like, you want to do this next year or like 5 years from now? So you also want to know a timeline. Okay, we collectively want to be married in the next year, the next 18 months, right? To say, I wouldn't recommend it if you're like, oh, we'll get married 5 years from now because so much is going to change. So once you're having those conversations with your partner to say, okay, we know we want this, we want to be married in the next year or 2 years, let's go to premarital counseling.
As you should.
Yeah.
I was to say, do you know if your parents went to premarital counseling? Because I think my parents just did like the biblical.
They did. So my godparents did my parents' premarital counseling, but it was intensive. Like they did it
Oh, you
kind
did
of
say
like
that.
yeah, because
Yeah.
we tried to get them and it wasn't gonna work out during like the tail end of the pandemic and everything else. But they did, I think, like 8 weeks when they do premarital counseling with people. It's like an 8 week deep dive. Like they really open it up and they mix both elements of religion and faith, and then also like the practical elements of getting married and being in relationship. But we couldn't make it work with them. But I think my parents only did that. They didn't go to somebody who was like
An
licensed.
actual licensed
Yeah, I don't think
therapist.
my godparents, either of them are licensed technically within the therapy world, like mental health therapy space. So that was what they did. But yeah,
I think it was just like not thought of back then. Just they just thought, oh, okay, well the officiant, is just gonna do it. So I think it's kind of how our parents growing up and stuff like that just kind of dealt with things.
So what would you speak to that on people? Like we grew up in Christian households. Other people that might be listening to this might have like some other version of religious, like premarital kind of counseling that they do with somebody who's going to marry them. What's your thought or opinion on that versus what you do in the more professional, like licensed space?
I think for each couple, they have to know what they're comfortable with. I know, a lot of people want to go to their pastor or members of their church might do marriage counseling, or they have the marriage ministry that they go to, and that's okay. If they're comfortable with that, they feel like that's what their marriage needs. That's what they need from their partner. I've also met people who do both, who will, meet with their pastor, but then they'll also come see me because they want the more therapeutic framework of counseling and kind of working more on kind of where we can talk about some of those internal things where I might, recommend to one partner, like, okay, maybe you should try individual therapy because there's a lot here that we're not going to be able to cover in premarital counseling, but you want to work on individually so you can be a better spouse. And so just being able to see that, identify those triggers and know, okay, these are things that are coming from a therapeutic framework that you want to work on in your relationship. And these are things that you can continue to do together after you're married, working on that in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have people who do premarital counseling, but then will also see me for marriage counseling after, and then we'll work on the specific marriage issues then.
The realm of everything. It's whatever you're comfortable with, which is good.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we did.
We did both.
We did both only because the what we wanted to avoid was a such a purely based like religious premarital counseling to where and it's kind of controversial to say, I guess, but it doesn't give the, like you said, the frameworks of or the what I would say is like the practical or real kind of perspective. Like, okay, this is, I see what the Bible says about this, about this, about this, but I'm having a argument about one specific thing with my significant other.
I forgot to wash the dishes. How am I supposed to fix this?
Right.
Like,
and I got triggered with something. Like, tell me how to like, what is the step-by-step guide I can use that can help us out in this situation or these groupings of situations that we tend to see ourselves in patterns. Like, help me with that. So that was what we talked about going into it.
yes.
Like, we want both sides of it, so that we're not just like so that we're not missing anything. We're not skipping a beat or anything on it.
Right, which is great because that way you're satisfying your whole self. You don't feel like we're doing something out here, and we can give ourselves, what's important to us. Okay, God is important to us in our marriage. We want to keep God first, so we get that part, and then we get the piece where we could speak to a licensed therapist about other things that might be happening that might dive a little bit deeper into understanding. Okay, what kind of methods should we use when this happens?
Nice. So the big question that everybody always talks about, the C word. How important is communication in a relationship? And then what tips do you have for couples to improve their communication?
Yes, communication. That's at the top of the list all the time. How are you communicating with your spouse? Because when do arguments happen? Because we don't communicate and we might misunderstand. And so John and Julie Gottman talk about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and they talk about communication. When it breaks down, it's usually one of the four things, one of the four horsemen, which is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and blaming. So, are we doing those things? When do they show up? So, I like to teach couples how to talk with, use the feeling that's there. There's always a feeling behind it when something happens. I'm angry at you because you didn't wash the dishes, you left a mess here. Well, say, hey, I'm hurt, I'm disappointed, I'm sad that you weren't able to think about my needs in this moment. And when you could use that feeling, when you cannot blame and say, you always do this, you always never think about me, and I hate when you do it, and I don't like that you leave plates everywhere. When it doesn't come from that standpoint, it's like, okay, your partner can hear the feeling behind it. We can talk about it. And then once we're able to talk about it, we let our guard down so you don't get defensive about it. You say, hey, I'm not stonewalling you into a corner where you feel your emotional triggers, because when you feel emotional overwhelmed, you're stonewalled. So you might feel this is too hot. So when you guys have those arguments, you're like, it's too hot, it's too hot. Let's take a break, let's slow down. But if I know what I'm feeling, if we could communicate, hey, I need a break because my system is overwhelmed right now and I need to slow down, your partner can understand that, as opposed to, you know what, I hate you, I'm slamming the door, get away from me.
Yeah.
We always want to make sure we're able to communicate the needs together and communicate what we want to say, and make sure, okay, does my partner understand this? So it's okay to also say, hey, if I hear you right, you're saying this right now. So it's okay to clarify, in communication. If I hear you, it's this, you feel hurt because of this. So next time I'm going to remember to try to do it better.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I've heard of Gottman's research
Yes,
before. I think if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, he's like coded like frame by frame, millisecond by millisecond, like interactions
yes,
within
yes,
his sessions, and he can tell within like 10 seconds or so if a couple is gonna last or
Oh yeah, I
not.
remember you telling me that.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was, I
mhm,
think one interesting piece that I took away from his research was if one of the couples said, or one of the significant others said, hey, pay attention to like this over here, or look at that, like look at that bird, or look at that over there, if the other one didn't look, that was like a clear tell that things were going to start going downhill if they weren't already going downhill. Just that like small bit of like, oh, pay attention to what I'm paying attention to real quick, and be present with me, was
Yeah.
like huge. And it really got me thinking about that, of like, well, what kinds of things in our relationship, and when you're like, hey, can you pay attention to this, and I'm like, no, that's not that important. Or now I'm trying to be more conscious and aware of like, hey, can you look at this? Boom, I'll look at it for
Yeah.
you, just so that those four horsemen don't start to creep in
don't you?
into it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I want to make sure I just got the four horsemen right. So it's criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And so, yeah, and you're right, Adam. So that he did tons and tons of experiments where, when they do the relationship sound house, they put people in this love lab and recorded every second of their
Wow.
day to find out, what are the things that come up in communication that are predictors for divorce. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the main predictors was contempt. When we feel contempt, resentment, when we're doing those knockdown, drag down arguments with our partner, then you're more likely to lead to divorce. So that's why communication is just so important in a relationship, and being able to know your partner. What does your partner need at the time? What type of communication do they need? So if it's those things like, hey, I really want you to look at this, and you're texting, or you're like scrolling on Instagram, when your partner wants your attention, to be able to say, oh wait, that's a need that my partner has. Let me meet that need right now.
So you also do coaching. You do
Yeah.
like relationship coaching. I could probably guess which one's more enjoyable for you, but I'll let you answer that question. And then for people out there who are probably still on the fence, or like they still are, they still carry that stigma of what, I'm gonna go see a shrink, or we're in such dire straits.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the major differences to coaching versus counseling that you can give that, like, the people in our audience?
Okay, so I'll start with that. So the major difference between coaching and therapy is that therapy will take you more towards your internal awareness of your system. So we'll talk more about that deep dive into traumas. We'll talk about family history. We'll talk about how your mother, your father, your sister, your brother affected you as a person you are now, and what you're bringing that. You're bringing that to your marriage. When we're doing coaching, we're doing more directed, short term, solution focused issues. So when people come to me for coaching, whether it's relationship coaching, and to be like, okay, either they'll have issues forming healthy relationships with people. So it's not just about dating or marriage. It might be a relationship with friends, with their sister, their brother. And so just forming healthy relationships and kind of identifying what they're doing. So
Mm-hmm.
we do really specific solution focused tasks each session that I'll give them to do, and then come back and talk about it and say, okay, what went wrong? What stopped you from doing this? What's going on? Because we want to be able to find that solution. And so that's usually the main difference when people see a coach or they see a therapist, whether they go to a life coach. It's like, okay, we're doing these solution focuses right now. There's a problem, you have a need, let's develop some SMART goals, and we're going to fix it. And so people feel like that's helpful to them and feel like, okay, that's all I'm looking for. So a lot of people with therapy is hard. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had people, do therapy sessions and just feeling all these emotions come up, and they're like, what do I do with this? I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So it can bring a lot, and some people don't want all that, and that's okay. And that's okay. And so we'll just do more coaching for them. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the best piece of advice you can offer to a couple just beginning their journey together?
Yeah. Enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Just really enjoy the ride. I feel like we spend so much time one comparing ourselves to other couples, what we're not
Yes.
doing, what they're doing, what we don't have, that you forget to really live in the present
Mm-hmm.
and saying, "Hey, this is my person." And remembering your why. So, even as you're getting married, you're going on that journey. Why? Why are we doing this? What do I love about you? I'm choosing you every day. So
Yeah.
also remember, I'm choosing you every day. And one of the things I always tell my son is say every day is a great day to have a great day. So with your spouse, it's like every day is a great day to have a great day. We might have argued about this yesterday, but today I'm choosing you and I want to have a great day with you. So let's have a great day together.
Yeah.
So even when you wake up in the morning, it's like, hey, I want to give you a kiss before we leave the house. I love you. Before you get on a flight, Anisha, you make sure you tell Adam I love you. Because
Absolutely.
we don't know what will happen. And we
Mm-hmm.
always want to have a great day together. So
Yeah.
really just enjoy it. Enjoy the time, enjoy the present, stay focused on the here and now because that's what we have.
Remember the one thing that we used to talk about all the time, like, is like how now everything was couples goals. You remember, like, when we first started dating, everything was just like couples goals. Everybody's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is couples goals," and I'm like, "Do you even know what's happening behind closed doors?" Like,
Yeah.
we just see the surface level. We see them taking pictures and we see them post the good stuff, but you never see the bad stuff behind it. You don't know what they're going through. Like, you don't know these things. And it's like that, just enjoy what you have. Like, enjoy what
Right.
you have, enjoy what you're building, but don't like sit there and fantasize on what somebody else has because you don't know what they have. And
Mm-mm.
what you're asking for, you could be asking for Pandora's box to open up and you don't know that. And so that's just that enjoying the moment, just that really kind of just, I like that because it's like a lot of people don't enjoy it. Then they sit there and they're on social media and they're just looking at everything that everybody else has and what they're getting and stuff like that, and that just brings problems into the relationship, like, I think real early, really early.
Right. Right. And even those couples goals, it's like, oh, you have all these, you look like this is great. Your relationship is great. And then one day you don't see them post anymore and it's gone.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, now I want to know what happened because I'm
Yep.
emotionally invested in
Yep.
your relationship. So that's why you come back. Stay present with your own relationship. Just worry about
Mm-mm-mm.
what's happening in your
Mind
house.
your own business.
Yep.
Yes, yes, what's happening in your house because that's important. Have your own couples goals because it's
Hmm.
like, hey, maybe we cook dinner together on Saturday, and that's our couples goals. That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
As the philosopher Jermaine Cole once
Oh
said,
my
"There's no
goodness.
such thing as
A
a
life
life
that's
that's better
better
than
than
yours."
yours.
Because our couple's goal is getting that PS5 from Dave and Buster's.
That's our couples goal right now. That is literally our couples goal right now, is to get that PS5 from Dave and Buster's. And we have not been in Dave and Buster's in maybe like a month,
Yo, we're
but
slacking
yes,
on
that's our
that.
goal right now. That's it. That's
That's
all.
it. That's all. That's certain. So there's just so much more that I know we could talk to you about because you also do parenting, parental coaching, and
Yeah.
therapy and stuff. So we'll definitely have to have you back on because we have some people that are in that stage of life. We'll
Yeah,
get there
yeah,
someday soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, we
yeah,
would love to have you on and what you talked about before we started
Yeah,
recording.
you guys didn't hear, but her husband used to do, what was it again?
He's a
He was a
divorce
divorce
attorney.
attorney. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to have
yeah,
him on because
That's a
yeah,
very different dynamic there.
on the end of
yes,
that, yeah, and hear what he has to
yeah,
say. So
yeah. He'll be excited to talk to you guys. He wants to tell you all the good stuff.
I want to hear it.
I want to hear the real, the raw, the. It's because what I came across on Instagram, it was this divorce attorney, and they were asking him some questions. He was on a podcast and he was talking about just the little things, kind of like the Gottman research, just the little things about, he asked one of his clients, he was like, hey, so, the stuff was, everything was done. Like, when did you know that it was over? Like, when did you know that the relationship was over? And she was talking about, there was a certain granola that she would keep in her cabinet.
Oh yeah.
And her husband would just keep refilling it without her asking. And it was just like that little thing. And then one day it wasn't refilled. And then he went, like the other day he went and refilled it. And then after a while, it just never got refilled. And she knew at that moment, this is it. We're done.
It's so sad.
Yeah, but just the purity of, you're so close with what he was talking about. You're so close with your clients. You get to know, because you get to know everything, because it could get real ugly, but you have to, and you get to know everything. So you're really able to dissect and diagnose what went wrong and reverse engineer it like easily. So I think not defense attorneys, but divorce lawyers are probably some of the best people to talk to about what not to do in a relationship.
Gossip.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us the tea.
Yes. And even people go to marriage therapy, even, when they know they're going to get divorced. So there's also conscious uncoupling. So when people, we want to get divorced, we don't want to hate each other. So people will go to therapy to figure out, okay, look, what do we need? What does that look like for us?
Yeah. That's probably just so hard to just see it. Like, the writing's there on the wall, and then you just have to face it, just face the music. And then you just sit there and you're just like, it's something that's dying. Like it's literally another like era of your life that you watered this flower, and this flower was growing, and then the flower started dying, and you have to literally throw it out. And it's like, that's kind of sad when you think about it. Like, it's really sad.
Or it could be happy. Or it could
for
be
some
like,
people,
hey, you know what? It could be like, this is done. And when people are able to realize, hey, this phase of my life is done, and that's okay. I'm ready for what's next. So it's another transition that happens. Because sometimes, even marriage counseling, when people come, it doesn't mean that your marriage is going to last.
Yeah.
And so it means that, hey, maybe we do want to get divorced at the end of it. We realize this just isn't working. But now, since we were able to go through the process of marriage counseling, we understand how to do this together.
Smoother transition in a way. I mean, it's like, it's not the good poetry, but it is a like kind of a poetic type of ending to it if you look at it like that, like a Shakespearean type of ending to it.
I just want to know if he's ever like just had repeat offenders, like repeat customers, and like, is he's told them, like, he gives them counseling, like, please just don't do this anymore.
Stop getting married.
Give up on it. Just give up on it. I'm sorry.
Anisha, that puts money into
in their pockets. Yeah.
He's like, no, please come back.
Like, that's just crazy though, because I mean, when you think about celebrities and like how much they just like get in relationships and then divorce, and I'm just like, you got to give it up sometime.
That's called, on the business world, lifetime customer value. So you have a you have a client, like a lifetime value
on retainer,
because you keep giving them more value because they keep coming back to you. So last two questions, because I'm always curious when I meet therapists to ask this question. First off, what do you do because therapy can be very emotional in taking, like, you're having to receive all of those emotions and being a container. How do you reset or offload from all of that emotional weight that you take on? And then the second question, which is completely different from this, what is next for you when talking about your practice and your coaching and your business? What's next for you? What do you have in store?
Okay. So first, how do I take it off? So you mentioned I do CrossFit, hot yoga, me endurance sports. So it was always lifting heavy weights, doing a HIIT class on my Peloton, anything to get me moving. It's like, okay, I'm releasing this. So that's my way of kind of saying, I don't want this anymore. Also, kind of waking up and making sure, before I go into the day, that I have space and time for me and really paying attention to my own life. So when I cut my computer off, I work virtually. So when I cut my computer off, it's done. And then I just pay attention to my kids, my husband. My life is very full. I have a lot to do all the time. So there's no space to kind of carry other people's trauma with me. Yeah.
Mm. And then
Yeah.
what's next for you in terms of business, like your career,
Mhm.
life, business? Like what's next for you?
Yeah, so to really continue to grow my own practice, you mentioned I also do perinatal mental health, so working with maternal health with women and giving birth. So I'd like to move over to that, and I work with couples who are facing fertility issues. So being able to do a little bit more work with birth traumas, helping couples with issues with infertility, understanding kind of the process, just that the struggle that comes with that when you want a family, when you want it so bad, but it's just not happening the way you see it, the way you always envisioned. So, just being able to continue to work with couples and grow with that, and then continue to do more parent coaching also, and working with parents on emotional regulation skills as they raise their own children.
Did you watch The Parent Test?
Oh, why didn't we get into that?
I watched a couple of episodes of that. I didn't watch every episode. I watched a little bit of it. I thought that
We'll
was
have to
interesting.
save that
Yeah, because
conversation.
we watched
Yeah,
it.
We'll bring you
yeah. Well,
we
next time we'll talk about
yeah, we'll bring you back on to do an episode for the parents that we we have in our audience and talk to you about that.
That was very interesting. Very
Very
interesting.
interesting. We
that.
have a
Yeah,
lot of thoughts,
yeah,
so we wanna talk through them with you. I know we will post your links, but where can people mostly find you?
yeah. So I'm on Instagram. I have an Instagram for everything family and marriage. It's called generational underscore family underscore joy. And it's on TikTok as generational family joy. And then my website is pascolife.com. And then my other Instagram for everything therapy and mental health is Pasco Life. Pasco Life.
Let's go live. Awesome.
Or you
Well,
can email me, or feel free to email me at jwilliams@pascolife.com. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me.
awesome. We'll have all your links and your email down in the description, in the show notes for everybody to get connected and contact with you. We'll certainly be following you
Yeah.
as well. But
Thank you.
we'll be signing off for now of this episode, starting season 2 off strong.
Amen.
We'll be hitting you with some heavy expert interviews with a lot of good value. So keep locked into the Lovely Podcast, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you for having me.
That was
Okay,
great.